All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Colonel Steve Mico, and I am the Army Capability Manager for Cyber. And for the next half hour or so, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Army Cyber Portfolio. So I'm going to touch about 4 different topics today. So first, I'm going to talk to you about the team of teams that we have that really makes Army cyber acquisitions work. It allows us to rapidly develop, field, and iterate capabilities to the force. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of our portfolio at the unclassified level. If you've been here in previous networks or previous TechNets, you've probably seen a little bit of this. I'm going to highlight a few different nuances on that. I'm going to give some insights on where I think the future of cyber is going. These are just my insights. I don't wear stars. I can't predict the future, and we know in our discipline, in the 5th domain, that things rapidly change. But it's some insights that may prove valuable. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can engage with our team and how we can work on solutions together. So with that, let's go to the first slide, Sean. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the team we have. So unique among many of the acquisition programs in the Army, everything under ACM Cyber falls under the IT box construct. And I won't go into depth on that, but basically, the Army entrusts us with a certain amount of money, credit limit, if you will, for 5 years. It bounds us with a couple of requirements, and it delegates the approval very low. So, for example, to get my documents signed, for the most part, it's 2 people on Fort Gordon. What that allows me to do is to take our requirements, rapidly iterate on those, get feedback from the field, change those, and continually field and put out relevant systems to the warfighter at a very fast pace. But that IT box isn't what makes it work. What makes it work is the team. And the team that I'll call the DevSecOps triad. And that consists of really 3 pillars here. It consists of my requirement owners. And they're at the top. Those are my customers and my users. We have a very diverse user base. So a lot of it is Army Cyber, Strategic Cyber, U.S. Army troops under our Cyber Command, operating under United States Cyber Command authorities. But I also resource the ACM sections out in ForceCom, and USRPAC and USRAF on the contact layer. They're also my customers. And then, at least for one of our programs, PCTE, the Persistent Cyber Training Environment, we also serve as a representative for the Joint Force. So on that, I wear a hat that I represent Cybercom, I wear a hat that I represent the Army, and I wear a hat that I represent all 6 different services now. So those are our customers. At the ACM, what we do is we take those customers and we explore with them what their capability gaps are. What do you not have met right now? And then we develop requirements for those. And those requirements are usually material solutions, but they can be anything along the .MLPFP spectrum. It could be doctrine, it could be recommending an organization change. For the context here, it's now material. That's only 2 parts. But then I have to go to my program managers who run the acquisition. And they're really the ones who take that requirement and field it. But here's the magic. Here's the secret sauce. I can do this very quickly because all 3 of those pillars are tied in very quickly. So I'll give an example. One of my projects that I do for U.S. Cybercom, I provide a new capability to cyber forces in contact roughly every quarter. Now, if you take a look at some of the major acquisition programs, that seems unthinkable. But that's because when I sit down that very first week, I have my customers, the people who are actually on the keyboard. I have my R-Cyber representatives who see the whole strategic vision. I have my friends from the PM in the room to figure out what's feasible and to figure out the costing. And I have ourselves, we usually bring in ATEC too. And with that, we can very rapidly iterate a requirement. I can get it signed sometimes within 30 days, and I can start delivering within 3 months, and sometimes even sooner than that. So finally, I'll highlight the fact that ACM Cyber works with 4 outstanding PEOs and PMs. On the defensive side, we work with PMDCO Mark Taylor, who's in the front row. For offensive, we work with PEO IEWS, PM Information Warfare. For PCTE, we work with PEO STRI, and for Cyber SU, We work with PM Mission Command. Now, I have put in 2 boxes here for industry partners. And this being TechNet, I think it's important to explain how you guys fit in. I can have the best gap from the user, and I can make the best requirement to fill that. And my PMs can go out and do the best contracting, the best management. But the solutions come from industry. And so we'll hit on this a little bit at the back. But where we need industry to engage is really 2 places primarily. First, at the customer level, and this is for our cyber. So I'll go and I'll figure out what their gaps are. But you guys are the ones blazing the technology, right? You are the ones who are coming up with solutions to my gaps that I haven't even thought of, that I haven't put in the requirement. Allowing the customer to understand what that is and what those potentials, what the potential for that is, really helps inform our requirement. Now, on the other side, down at the PM side, when we know what that requirement is and we know what the solutions are, engaging with our PMs so we can do best of breed and we can figure out whether product A or B is right for this particular use case is also extremely important. And we'll come back and we'll hit on that a little bit later. Next slide, Sean. So I'll do just a brief overview of the ACM Cyber Portfolio. So with this, words matter, but also colors matter. And I'll point out a few nuances here. The first thing is the colors, right? So we're an Army capability manager. But on the color scheme here, you see 3 different colors. You see green, you see gray, and you see purple. Green is where I support maneuver forces in contact or in competition. Muddy boots, brigades, divisions, corps, even AFCEAs. Gray is that strategic Army cyber, your cyber mission force that I support directly to the Army. And then purple is where we support the joint force with joint capabilities. And so you can see this is a very nuanced portfolio. I do support troops on the ground, but I do a lot of support to the Army and a lot of support to the joint force. And that's where I talked about PCTE. What I suspect will happen over time as U.S. Cybercom has more and more budgetary authority is I expect that a lot of our gray will become purple, and I can't tell you in what form or what timeline or how that works out. I can expect that if that becomes more purple, the onus on me as an Army capability manager is going to be to shift my focus then to resource that, but then also resource the green. So I think that's sort of the way ahead in the next couple of years as we go through this. So just a brief once around the world of the portfolios itself. I have 4 different branches, 4 different portfolios. Defensive cyber operations. The first 3 that you see there, which are the garrison defensive platform, the tactical defensive infrastructure, and the DDSMs. We think of those as our cyber maneuver platforms. That's actually what is on net, collecting information, having effects. Garrison, as it would suggest, post camps and stations. Tactical, as it would suggest, out in the field. And the DDSM, so those are those modular kits that we send our cyber protection teams out with all over the world, all over infrastructure to get that done. In the middle, you'll see cyberspace analytics. So during General Barrett's address today, she mentioned the power of big data and a big data platform. That's what that is. And it's not just hosting. It's not just a platform, right? I can accumulate data, but then what do I do with it? So under that platform or under that element also includes the underlying cyber analytics that take all that data, bring it to information, then knowledge and insight. And at the bottom are what I would say are kind of more niche applications, right? That certainly contribute to the enterprise and they'll feed into that big data platform to provide us insight. But they're separate. Now on the OCO side, for this, you'll see a little bit of purple, right? Because as we start maturing as an enterprise, a lot of the stuff is becoming joint. JICWA, the Joint Cyber Warfighting Architecture, is a thing now, and we begin to integrate with that. The first 4 are really our core capabilities. What do I really need to do? I need to be able to develop capabilities. I need to put them out there. I need to control them, and I need to target, right? And then the bottom are really what we develop effects against. The third pillar is unique, and I often have trouble explaining this to cyber professionals. It's the cyberspace situational understanding portfolio. And immediately people start thinking, that's a cyber tool, right? Yeah, that's what the CMF uses. Don't they use IKE? It's not. This fills the gap that we have in the tactical force, which is at a brigade, division, corps, CP. We have all sorts of mission command systems. We have AFCEA to figure out where fires are going, or JDOCs. We have AMDUs. We have CPCE or CPA. But we have nothing to capture the cyber electromagnetic environment, to give the commander the understanding of what's going on in that entire domain and how that affects his operations. And that's what cyberspace situational understanding is meant to do. It is a maneuver tool for maneuver units to make decisions. And then finally, we have the persistent cyber training environment. So this stems out of NDAAs, where we come in and we provide a single platform for the DoD cyberspace workforce to train, certify, and rehearse their missions. A joint program, a joint capability. Now, we've started out small. With our initial budget, we focused mainly on the CMF. As we go into the future, we will be looking at how do we scale that out to the entire cyberspace workforce to encompass everything from RCCs all the way up to the CMF. All right, next slide, please. All right, so here's the meat of things. Where do I see things going in the future? And what are the trends? And more importantly, for many of you out in the audience, what are the opportunities? So I'll make the full disclaimer that I do not have a crystal ball, right? As I look at Army Futures Command, we talk about the Army of 2040. And I think back, wow, that's like 18 years from now. And then I think about the phone I had 18 years ago. And I think I was still using a flip phone. So this is kind of where I think it's going. So the first one is sensing at the edge and analyzing at echelon. So if there's one thing we know as we move to multi-domain operations, it's that we're going to need more data. We're going to need more data across the world. We need more targeting data. I need more network defense data. I need logistics data. I need all of this data, and I need to analyze it very quick. Well, there's a problem there, right? Where do I do that, and how do I transport that without overwhelming the system? And so I think the model that you'll start seeing in Project Convergence, and you'll start seeing in some other experiments, is how do we put those sensors out at the edge, allow them to do limited analytics for that edge echelon that they're at, but then also allow the greater enterprise up in Sanctuary to access that data, not stream it to them and overwhelm the network, but access that data to then deliver insights across the enterprise or across the theater. So I think that's where we're going with that. Similarly, on the hardware side. So I'm unique, right? I have cyber brass, but I also have a signal core regimental pin. So I remember the days when we moved from butcher boards and SynGARS radios to all of a sudden we had server stacks just popping up in our talks, right? A ton of different hardware, one for each and every different application. That's not where we're going now, right? That doesn't fit mobility, that doesn't fit survivability, and that certainly doesn't fit data integration. So how can I replace what would have been hardware with a virtualized or containerized application? So maybe instead of putting physical sensors out on every different network and dropping off a piece of kit, maybe I have virtual sensors. So I see that as a winning app coming up. And so then we move to kind of the next related part of that. Where do we do our heavy compute and storage? So really, this is sort of like the juxtaposition, right? We want more data. Okay, we've got the data now. We need more insight, and that requires heavy computing and heavy analytics. But at the same time, out in the field, I want lighter and lighter and lighter. Well, those in this community know that just doesn't work. So as we look at it, what can I move out to the cloud and have the cloud or nodes back in Sanctuary do that heavy compute and storage? Again, going back to the first bullet, taking only the data I need from the edge without bogging down the network. Doing all that heavy compute and storage, and then presenting back down to the tactical layer the end product that they need. Process where it makes sense, push back only what I need. So this does get into the hybrid cloud architecture. Also, as a former Signal guy, I know that if I put everything in the cloud, that induces a lot of risk, right? We've all had outages. We all know how that works. So then what is that right mix, right? What is that right mix of cloud computing versus an edge capability? So that's something that we'll look at as well. So now I'll talk a little bit about stuff that is traditionally OCO, but I think it applies to analytics across the enterprise. And that is sort of the penchant that we've gone on for many years of looking for bespoke capabilities for each potential application. Right? I have a target I want to go after. I have one backpack for one target, one backpack for another target. I have one capability, for this analytic, and I have another capability for this analytic, and they're delivered separately, and they may or may not work together. The Army has made significant investments in its workforce. We now have the MOS-17 Delta developer, the MOS-170 Delta warrant officer developer. I think you'll see later on during some of the presentations at TechNet, we're making significant investments in our 26 community to make them literate on both data, on manipulating data and how to use it. So what I'm looking for now, and what I think the Army will be looking for in the future, is don't give us that end-to-end capability. Give us the tools that we can do that on our own. Don't give me a different backpack for everything. Give me a software-defined radio, and I've got smart people who can program that at the edge to the capability we need. Don't give me a specific program or analytic. Give me the source code, the blocks that I can put together, that I can do that, because I'm going to figure out use cases for it I didn't anticipate when we first started out. Now I'm going to switch a little bit to PCT and cyber learning. So part of this, and kind of everything riffs on each other, right? We talk about this new workforce we're developing, right? How do I create a lifelong cyber professional and train them? This is more than just recruiting and getting people into their first ADSO. This is about their entire career, from when they first show up at Fort Gordon until potentially when they retire as a GS after their military career. So how do I inculcate that? Well, I need to be able to do that at the schoolhouse when they first come in. I need to present a platform where they can train and where their learning is cataloged and where their certifications are noted. Then as they go on to their unit, that follows with them. And now you get a general block of knowledge at the schoolhouse, but now I go to the unit and I have a different block of knowledge. Well, now that's captured. I'm out of the business of bringing my I Love My binder and my certifications. It's in the system. But more than that, right? The type of people that we recruit now are not the type that just turn off IT when they go home, right? These are people that love fooling around and doing their own projects at home. Can I give them access to do that at the home? Can I give them a platform? Many of them are doing it already, right? Many people have CyberGen, they have different applications. But how can I get that lifelong learning? I think that gets to a learning management system and ability to track that progress. Cloud-native analytics. So both with analytics and with software in general, we are looking, as I kind of talked about, how we bring that up to the cloud now for heavy computing and storage, and how I move it off tactical or specific hardware. The software has to go with that, right? Containerization goes a long way for that. But if we're now providing a capability, whether it's an analytic or a visualization or something else, if it doesn't work with the cloud, it's going to have a limited use case. Zero trust architecture and securing cloud storage. Stuff I didn't anticipate when I was here 20 years ago as a young lieutenant. I think as we look at zero trust architecture, or zero trust architecture, at least for us in cyber, it's still something we're figuring out how that works. And then how does that play into our defensive cyber operations? What is just cybersecurity that the DoDN folks do? And what do we do as a DCO force? And what capabilities do I need? To be determined. Cloud security. We've pushed a lot of stuff up into the cloud right now, and a lot of it's commercial providers under government contract. It's IL level, so it's good. How do we secure that as an enterprise? And those are things that I don't have answers for, I don't have requirements for, but I know that's a gap that's bubbling in the back. Data-driven analytics. So this goes definitely to our cyber forces, but also the tactical forces. It's great to have all this information. Where are the analytics that doesn't provide me, just a picture, but it provides me with courses of action and shows me what the impacts are for each of those. I think that's going to be increasingly important, especially as we bring cyber down to the theater and core levels. And then finally, controlled data migration. So a lot of people, for a lot of good reasons, are interested in this as we partner with multiple different, allies, partners, and other enablers. How do we go between those security enclaves? How do I take really important data that's at the TS level, right? And not all of that data, even though it's stored in TS, is actually TS. How do I use that to enrich information I have at the secret level, and I can provide that infrastructure outside of a SCIF, right? So maybe I pick up an indicator on the secret side, and I'm out in the field. I could use some insight, but without the sources from the high side, and how do I bring that back and forth? A lot of work being done on this, but I think it's definitely an opening in the future. Kind of the bumper sticker here, at least from the ACM side, is what we're looking for is game-changing technologies. Since we work a lot with commercial technologies, because honestly, right, the commercial sector does defensive cyber operations all the time. There are a lot of products that are similar. But what is different enough that would change our view on how we conduct operations and would alter our requirements? So that's what we're looking for. All right, now if we go, Sean, for the final slide. So how to engage, right? So we kind of mentioned there are two different pathways forward to engagement. I'd like to highlight on the left, and I don't know how many people know of this, our primary customer, which is our cyber, I comprise about 80% of my portfolio, has the Arctic, which is the Army, I mess this up every time, the Army Cyber Technology and Information Center, which is next door at the Georgia Cyber Center. They conduct innovation challenges. They take in new technology. They look at it. If you have a new technology, this is absolutely where you want to go for the cyber force to talk about how that can be applied. Alternatively, if you have maybe not the newest technology, but you have something you want considered, my program managers, and again, I'm gifted with 4 awesome program managers, are also available to integrate your technology or to take a look at it and see where it may or may not fit in the portfolio. So with that, I think we have about 15 minutes, Sean. Is that about right? Yes. All right. I will open it up to any questions. Okay, we have one question.
From my coworker meeting in Scotland, our cyber. We assume then that ACM sets the social standard for CMOS moving forward as a solution. Part 2 to that, do you see in that pillar of OCO as cause being the number 1 IRAD opportunity for business development and looking at the challenges and gaps that exist as well?
So I'll make qualified answers on both. Well, so to repeat, for the audio record here, do I see ACM Cyber as adhering to the CMOS standard, and do I see cause as the primary application for the counters? So I'll give qualified answers on both. First, for the CMOS standard, I would say that is, in general, the way forward, and that really gets to that point I had on the previous slide of give me that software-defined radio, give me that toolkit that I can plug in, and then I'll figure out how to do it. And CMOS makes that very easy. And that also allows me to port it between different platforms, which may or may not be in my portfolio, right? Do I think cause is the most important one? I'm not going to hazard to guess that. And I don't think I need to. I think if I have those software-defined radios, if I have other ways to access the infrastructure that are agnostic to what the target is, if I have the building blocks of what I need, then I can go after the target I need to when I need to. I know that's sort of a cop-out, but that's, again, how we're looking at it right now. All right. I will take any other questions. All right. Going once. Yes, ma'am. Wow. All right. Is there a joint training baseline standard for PCTE? So I think there's the way to look at this is there are different standards across the enterprise, right? Now, NSA certainly has a standard for their people. Cybercom is working on a standard for their people. But understand when I go back to that first chart of the teams, I have a lot of service-retained forces that don't fall under either of them, right? I have multi-domain effects battalions that are out in the field. I've got Air Force, it's not cyber mission teams, cyber defense teams, something like that. And then I have equivalents in the Navy that might be on ship, and I need to reach out to all of them. It would be helpful to have a common reference standard for what their qualifications are, but PCT is flexible enough that I can accommodate service standards and specific learning paths for specific organizations. Yes, sir. No, you're spot on. So the question was, PCT is there, but a lot of users are concerned that the actual training content that would be hosted on there isn't. So great, I have a platform, but I have no textbook. I have no learning course. That's absolutely 100% fair. I'll answer it this way. So as part of the original requirement, content was on the users to produce. But when I go back to that first chart, when I talk about how I identify gaps with the users and the customers, and then I fill solutions, that is absolutely something that we can take a look at on behalf of my users and say, hey, you know, we thought we had the ability to generate content, but now that's a requirement that we need you to help out with. Now, there's a whole lot of complexity with that, right? So I have a certain amount of money that goes to PO Stride to execute this. It may not fall within that. We may need to look at cost models. There may be different solutions. But that's a valid requirement that's, if that gets brought up, that can be brought into the process. One more? Okay. Okay. So while outside the purview of ACM Cyber, I think you're spot on, right? And I think if you listen to some of General Stanton's talk, is the incredible frustration of I have someone from the schoolhouse, great, now I need to retrain him, or I need to train him from the beginning for about a year before he's effective. I think PCT absolutely helps enable that. Now I can track and I can train that, and when they show up, I know where they're at. I think there is also, separate from PCT, there's the executive authority, you have to help me out here, I'm going to mince words, for advanced cyber training on the OCO side, that is the Army. On the DCO side, that is, of course, the Navy. How do they adjust their curriculums so that when they do produce these service members, that they come trained? PCT is a way for them to come fully trained and documented. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of TechNet. Thank you.